Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I am really happy to be here with you. The idea behind the show is to pay homage to humankind. It's to give our citizens of the world, of which we share, a big hug because of the beauty, the inventiveness that we have created. There's a lot of dark clouds in the sky, but if you look really closely, you'll also see incredible people who surround us every single day, who have done magnificent things for our world. And one of those people is my guest today, who I will tell you about in 1 second. A very special man. Before I do that, I would like to tell you that this podcast exists because of sponsorship and advertising, and we're building upon that as we go. Sponsorship connects your brand with our engaged, value-driven audience and ensure we can continue creating the high-quality content our viewers and listeners love and rely upon. We offer tailored sponsorship packages, including ad placement, sponsored segments, and social media mentions. Your support ensures we can keep sharing stories that celebrate and strengthen our vibrant community, be it Jewish or otherwise, to learn more and to get just really to make this world a better place. So if you want to be part of the vibe here, which is a very special one, please be in touch at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Now, friends, I am really happy to have as my guest today Mr. Ken Young. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. I'm
Now,
glad to be on the show.
delighted to have you, my friend. Ken Young is a citizen of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation. Did I say it correctly?
Opaskwayak Cree Nation.
Cree Nation, yes.
Yes.
He is a survivor of 2 residential schools, including Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and Dauphin, Manitoba, for 3 and 7 years, respectively. Ken has received his BA and LLB from the University of Manitoba and was called to the Manitoba Bar in 1974. In fact, beautiful news here, Ken was the first First Nations law graduate and lawyer from the University of Manitoba. That's wonderful. He's also been involved with First Nations politics as an elected regional chief from Manitoba at the Assembly of the First Nations. And Ken was a negotiator for one of the modern-day treaties signed in Canada, which dealt with damage from hydro development in Northern Manitoba in 1977. And he was also one of those who negotiated the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement in 2005. So how are you, my friend? It's so nice to have you here.
I'm delighted to be on the show, and I hope that we can provide worthwhile information to the listeners.
Yeah.
Through our discussion.
Now you live in Winnipeg, right?
Yes, I do. I've now been here for over 50 years in Winnipeg. I arrived here in 1964. And,
from where?
I came from my home community, OCN. Came to Winnipeg to I don't know what it was that I was pursuing. I came here and then I worked for a bit here and went back to school and became a member of the legal profession. I guess I had no plan to do that, but it worked out that way.
Tell me something. What do you wear in the wintertime, Ken? How do you dress for the cold?
Well, with climate change, it's not like it used to be. You have to wear long johns. It's not that way anymore. There's only about three or maybe a week or two that requires you to to dress a little more, a little warmer. And back in the day, it was a serious cold by now for days on end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I I'm not overly overdressed anymore
You have to
for
plug your
for
car
the
in
weather.
every night? Do you plug your car in?
Oh no, not anymore.
Not
No,
anymore.
no, no, no. It's not that way anymore.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they were going to get rid of block heaters from cars. I was hearing the other day.
Oh,
It's no longer a requirement.
I hadn't heard that.
We'll see what happens.
What kind of car do you drive?
Uh, I uh, I drive a Cruise, and then I have an Equinox.
Oh, I do
So
too.
I have two vehicles
Yeah.
that
Right.
I use from time to time.
You are a very interesting fellow because you're one of those individuals who decided at some point in time that you were comfortable being in the forefront of society, being a leader. And you did that through your association with First Nations as a lawyer, negotiating on behalf of the victims of residential schools. And now I know you come from a very big family. Were there 14 children?
Yes.
14 children. Were you the one child who would ultimately be comfortable being in the limelight, or were you at other siblings who were okay with that too?
Uh, well, here's what happened. Really, I'm in the middle. I had a twin sister.
Mhm.
In our family, we had three sets of twins, and I'm in the middle with my twin sister, and I'm by happenstance was the one who pursued higher education, university, and the rest of the family followed, including my older siblings.
Mhm.
Most of us in the family are pretty well we're pretty well educated. I have a brother who's a doctor in the States, and my older sister Roz, whose thesis I read to find out who I was after the IRS experience, was a professor at the University of British Columbia. And my siblings have all done well in the field of education. I like to think that I provided the uh, the drive for them to pursue higher learning,
Good for you.
and I'm proud of all of them, of course, and I'm proud of the fact that most of us have been able to contribute to uh, what our people deserve and what they need. And I'm not going to ignore the fact that our oldest brother was not a functioning person in terms of the way most of us were. He was uh, dependent on alcohol too much and lived on the streets. And yet, when he was also a survivor. And yet, when we lost him, when he passed, all of us attended his funeral. And I remember speaking at the funeral and talking about dignity, and that everyone, regardless of how they lived their life, deserved to be dealt with in a dignified way upon their leaving this earth, and and that's how we said goodbye to Jack, our oldest family member, and we were all there. The family were all there, and which was, in my view, a wonderful thing to do for our brother, who didn't live a life that most of us enjoyed. So,
When he was
what?
alive, would you see him on the street?
Oh, I really looked after Jack when he was here. I provided as much help as I could financially for him, and it was frustrating at times trying to
Yeah.
help him. And but at the end of the day, when he passed, I was the one who was called to go and identify him, and I did that. And he had received his IRS common experience payment, and we all received our common experience payment, and he received his, and he left it in the estate, and we're using that money for a scholarship fund for immediate family members
Great
who
idea.
receive any kind of graduation certificate from university or technical college, and I look after that for him, and I look
We
after that for the family.
we should tell our viewers that when you say IRS, you're referring to the residential school experience.
Yes, that's Indian residential school experience, and I think I'd like to address the issue of people using the words residential school
Mhm.
and not using the word Indian before it. These schools were created by Canada to strip the Indian from the child. And the Indian Act was used to enter into agreements with religious organizations to create these institutions. So the Catholic Church, which ran 66% of these schools, in fact, built many of these institutions on reserved land. And can you imagine kids being placed into those built institutions on their homeland and not being able to go home for 10 months of the year? That's what happened in many of these Catholic run Indian residential schools. And so the Indian residential school experience is a First Nation experience, in my view. Of the 150,000 children who were placed in these schools, over 90% of them were First Nations children. 90%, over 90%. So it's not an Indigenous experience. It's a First Nation experience, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that the Métis or the Inuit children should not be recognized as survivors. Of course they were. One child being placed into a situation like we were placed in is one too many. It's the way I look at it. But for people dealing with the issue, it's a First Nation issue, the way I see it, and that the words Indian residential school Indian residential schools. It's the way I look at them, and that's the way what I call them. They were created to take people like me from my community and place into a situation unknowing. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know that what Canada was doing was assimilating me, taking away my ability to communicate and think like the way my grandfather taught me to think.
Yes.
And I never forget my grandfather's teachings about what it is that we as First Nations people had and continue to have in relation to the land that we live in Canada. He told me we were out on the land on a beautiful day. We were out picking eggs, duck eggs for, he taught me how to pick eggs and how many to take and how many not to take. And he told me one day that in our language that what we see here, my grandson, is ours. Everything, the water, the land, the trees, everything, it's ours. And he remembers what the treaties were like and what they were written and how they were written.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that we didn't write those treaties. We know what we wanted in those treaties. Some of what we wanted in those treaties is there, but not everything that we wanted is in those treaties. The spirit and intent is not in those treaties. And he said that we never gave up anything. We never gave up the land. Still ours. What we did was we agreed to share it. And that by doing that, we agreed that we should have received something in return. And it never happened, and it's still not happening. And that the poverty that is so pervasive among our people is needs to be addressed. It's the greatest issue facing First Nation people today: poverty. If you're poor, you cannot do the things that you want to do or even hope to do.
Yes.
If you don't have the resources to do what it is that should be done for the people that, for instance, leadership represents. Health, housing. I mean, health. Let's take health. For anyone who is going to hear this, health is a treaty right. It's an Aboriginal right where there's no treaties. And health has not been defined. Health, in my view, and in the view of our elders, does not mean just being healthy. It also means having proper housing, proper drinking water. Of course, as you know, much of the drinking water has been destroyed by development. And now Canada has introduced legislation to do what it is that needs to be done to provide clean drinking water. But my question is, why is legislation required for a service that can be provided by a program with a proper budget and a proper plan. Education is not necessary. Legislation is not necessary
Mhm.
to provide clean drinking water in the communities. And that's what's happening now. And I question the legislation because, in my view, it's putting at risk the right of our people to do their own thing with their own water, regardless of its use and regardless of its location. In other words, Canada is saying you don't have jurisdiction over your own water. We're going to decide that.
Mhm.
That's what this legislation, in my view, is doing, including as well using self-government to say that this is how you're going to get clean drinking water. Well, self-government for our people was never meant to be included in legislation like this so that our people could make laws regarding access to water and the use of water. We never agreed to that. And Canada, by this legislation that they're introducing, is, in my opinion, imposing their will on our people, while at the same time saying that we're not doing so. And the biggest uh, other impediment that I see now is the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Our people do not belong to the United Nations, and they should not belong to the United Nations because the United Nations is our people from different countries who decided that they wanted to belong to this organization and at the same time make rules regarding the indigenous people in their countries and to really, in fact, take away the rights of those people without, in fact, ever giving back. That's what we experience. And yet we have treaties. And we are lucky that we have treaties because the indigenous people in those countries who belong to the United Nations do not have treaties except for New Zealand. New Zealand, the people there have a treaty. And they're able to use it and to make their own determination of what it is that their people should get. We have treaties here. And Canada has never seen fit to sit down and define what it is that the spirit and intent of treaty means. My grandfather talked about, and that's a responsibility that we have, and that if Canada is not going to implement the treaties, my treaty is Treaty 5. I see a nation of people sign Treaty 5, and that our people and Canada and the provinces, in our case Manitoba, need to sit down and define what it is those treaties mean, and to define a framework, lay out a framework on how those rights can be and be implemented in a responsible way. And that would address what I mentioned, the issue of poverty that is so pressing among our people. It's actually tragic to see what is going on in the communities. And now we have climate change, food security, drinking water security, transportation security, all of it created by climate change. And then Canada introduced the carbon tax legislation, and money is being collected
Mhm.
from pollution. In my view, that money belongs to our people.
Mhm.
And it's traceable back to our people because the oil and gas have been taken from First Nation land, and the pollution that's being assessed, a tax or by Canada, and it's billions of dollars being distributed to outsiders, and none of our people are involved in participating and receiving some of this money to address climate change, transportation issues in the north. It's food security. It's it's a problem that needs to be addressed by governments, by our people, and when that might happen, I don't know. Canada has now brought in, of course, the UN Declaration and legislated into place here, and we don't know how the courts are going to interpret Article 46, which protects Canada's sovereignty, and it's something that hasn't been addressed, and it has to be addressed. And I don't think the court should be invited to address it because it's could be problematic to give meaning to what Article 46 of the UN Declaration means in relation to First Nation sovereignty, First Nation rights, and the way people want to assert them. Our people want to assert their rights, and so it's a big challenge.
That is a good answer to my initial question, which I can't remember what it was. But I really, really appreciate how much you have on your mind. And
Yeah,
the fact that you speak like a real leader. Like when I was talking to Phil Fontaine and I was speaking with Ted Nolan when I did interviews with them, there is something so special about your leadership amongst the First Nations. Very erudite, very thought out, very cautious about the words that you use. And I always find it an absolute pleasure, really, to interview your friends, colleagues in the Native community, because to me, it's always like being part of a story being told. I think one of the things about First Nations, Métis as well, um, is that sense of storytelling. And you're very, very good at that. And I really appreciate it. But I have a question for you. Amongst the Jewish people since October 7th, in particular, we're asking the question as to why Jews are hated so much. why there's so much anti-Semitism. Okay, and there's all kinds of answers, Ken, such as jealousy. Right, the Jewish community has done well throughout the world. We established the state of Israel. There's a lot of Nobel Peace Prize winners or Nobel Prize winners who are Jewish, a high percentage of them. Jealousy. And when I listen to your narrative and the things that have happened to the First Nations for decades and decades and decades, including the IRS, the Indian residential schools, and including the trespassing of so many treaties, why do you think that your people are undermined so much, are hated so much?
I don't know if our people are hated so much as they're not understood. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, the courts have a lot to do with how the rights of our people are viewed. Before 1982, the courts, who were mostly non-First Nation people who didn't know or understand our history, interpreted the laws that affect our people and the treaties and in a way that wasn't necessarily fair. And prior to 1982, for instance, the Migratory Birds Conventions Act, an international agreement, was viewed as being more important than the rights of our people in relation to the exercise of a right to hunt for food. And that it was only a very good friend of mine by the name of Sam Friedman, who was in the Court of Appeal here, the Chief Justice of Manitoba, who realized that Canada, by making this convention, didn't know what it was doing in relation to the rights of the First Nation people to exercise their right to hunt, and that the Migratory Birds Convention legislation should not have been interpreted in a way that took away the right of our people to hunt for food, and that the Supreme Court of Canada, of course, did not agree with Mr. Friedman. But in 1982, when Section 35.1 was put into place, things changed, and that the Migratory Birds Convention Act was subject to the treaties. A lot of things were subject to the treaties because of what happened in 1982, when our leaders of the day, many of them not educated, but yet they knew what they wanted and went out before these politicians and negotiated Section 35. Section 35 recognized and affirmed treaty and Aboriginal rights. Didn't define them. That work needs to get done. Canada has an obligation, in my opinion, to call a meeting of the First Ministers and invite First Nations people to the table to negotiate the definition of Section 35 rights, the spirit and intent of the treaties. And I know, as I speak here, that the Métis and the Inuit will want to be there, and they should be there. But they have their own responsibility to define what it is the existing rights were on April 17, 1982, that were recognized and affirmed. What were they? And our people know what their rights were that existed on April 17, 1982. And one of them, in my opinion, is nationhood. And nationhood means that we have a right to make our own laws in the territories in which our treaties were made, and in the territories in which our Aboriginal title exists, where there are no treaties. That's in my clear understanding of what nationhood means. And the Métis and the Inuit can do likewise if they can convince you or I that they're a nation within the meaning of what nationhood means. And don't forget 1763, when the Royal Proclamation was put into place, Indian nations were mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Indian nations were mentioned. Aboriginal title was affirmed. It wasn't created by the Royal Proclamation. The Royal Proclamation stated that before any land in which Indian nations are situated, treaties must be negotiated in order to access that land. And as a result of what the Royal Proclamation provided, Aboriginal title was affirmed. It wasn't created by the proclamation, it was affirmed. And that our people are still waiting to have that right implemented in a way that will mean that Canada and the provinces do not have an absolute right to take resources from treaty land without the consent of the people who own those resources and who have always owned those resources. And the use of water in the way that it's being used has never been dealt with in a way that would provide compensation to the people for the use of that water. Hydrogeneration is it's an expensive proposition, and a lot of water is being used, and someone is being paid rent
Mm-hmm.
for the water that runs through the turbines, and it's not our people. Someone else is getting that money. And so the minerals, the oil and gas has been taken from the land on a daily basis. Someone else is benefiting from the use of that oil and gas. It's not our people. And I know Canada will say that, well, we give you money through a budget that's in Ottawa. Well, we're not a budget item. Our people are not a budget item. It's because of we are a budget item that we are poor. And because Canada has never provided the appropriate resources for our people to function properly, to provide new homes for our people, to provide health facilities for our people, to provide our own judicial system for our own people, to provide our own child welfare system for our people. Recently, Canada offered $47.8 billion for child welfare renewal. I ask, why is Canada prepared to spend $47.8 billion on one issue, child welfare? What about housing? What about health facilities? What about education? And it goes on and on. $47.8 billion for child welfare? I've been asking that question. Why $47.8 billion for one issue? $47.8 billion. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
$1 billion is a lot of money. And no one has answered my question. And I think that someone has to think about it. And it's problematic for me. And I'm not saying that child welfare should not be addressed. It needs to be addressed. Our people, our children have been pawns for a long time by governments. I'm a victim of that. 10 years of Indian residential schools. In 1951, when the Indian Act was amended, Section 88 was introduced. It made provincial laws of general application apply to First Nation communities. And as a result of that, we saw the 60 scoop. We saw children being removed from the communities almost on a daily basis and adopted all over the world. And so there's a lot of work to be done. We need to do a lot of work. And, you mentioned why I don't think people hate First Nations people or Jews. They don't understand them. I think that's the proper way of looking at it. If you don't understand something, you're going to fear it, and you're going to deal with it in a way that's not respectful, and it's not necessarily going to work out in a way that that's going to be positive for anyone. And we've lived that for far too long, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be addressed. So those are my thoughts on that.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. You know, when I did a little bit of research into the Cree Nation, of which you are part of, it's one of the largest Indigenous groups in Canada, has a rich cultural heritage with deep traditions and rituals. And the following are some of your cultural rituals. Now, I mention this in light of what you just said, that First Nations is not well understood. You added the Jewish people are not well understood, and I would agree with you. So when you talk about understood or better understood, as far as, let's say, the Cree Nation goes, there are some beautiful, beautiful rituals that you have, which I think could benefit everybody. And if people really, really understood the value of these things, I think you're right. I think our relationships would change. One of those things is the sweat lodge ceremony, the inipi. Another is the Sundance. the Cree language, Nihiyawak, the harvesting ceremonies and the feasts, and of course the Cree drumming circle, which is a fundamental aspect of Cree culture and spiritual life. I've been in drumming circles. I went to a reserve up north of Kenora, and I've just felt the sound of the drum was so powerful. At some point, I just had to leave the room because I felt like it was going right through my soul. Is this what you mean when you say that the First Nations, that the Cree people need to be understood better, the beauty that they bring to the world?
Well, I that's important, but for our people, I think I think it has more to do with understanding what it is are the rights of our people.
Mhm, mhm.
The rights. How do you put those rights into a perspective that allows our people to have their own economy, to control their own economy, control their own future? And the ceremonies are a part of the ceremonies, and the traditions are a part of who we are. And that I don't expect everybody to understand what it is the sweat lodge really means. I don't really, if people want to participate in that aspect of our culture, they're invited to do so. But what I would prefer people to know and understand is what are the rights of our people that could be put into an economic dimension that would create a situation where our people can extricate themselves from poverty, the dysfunction that's so prevalent among our people that right now, as we speak, and that the young people coming up now don't deserve that. They don't deserve it. They deserve a better future than what I saw and what I'm now seeing
Mhm.
in the communities, and that it's all as a result of lack of a fair share of what it is that our people are entitled to from such a rich country.
What is your vision for the future? Do you think that'll ultimately come to fruition? That there will be an economic model that First Nations will implement and self-government? Do you think that'll happen?
That has to happen. It's not going to. I keep saying this reconciliation, which Canada and everyone else is talking about, is not just about statutes, symbols, flags. It's about defining and identifying the rights of our people and developing an implementation strategy to implement those rights. Otherwise, reconciliation is going to continue to be a mirage, something that people just talk about. We need to do what I just said: identify and define the rights, develop a national strategy to implement those rights. And it will require leadership from the governments, including our own people, to do that. And I don't see it happening right now. And it's actually depressing. And the young people coming behind me don't deserve that. Absolutely not.
Well, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission essentially had the outcome of it was, and I was there in Ottawa when they wrapped things up. I think there were 94 recommendations, right?
Yeah.
Are any of them being implemented in a way that make you happy?
Well, to tell you, they they haven't been implemented the way that they should be implemented.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Canada said that they would implement it, but what they should have done was create a, a, a situation where the people impacted by those calls to action should have been called to the table to create what I just talked about,
Mhm.
a plan to implement the rights of our people, so that we can begin to address the economic issues that I've raised, and providing an even share of the wealth that's being generated from the use of the land and the resources by outsiders. Our people have never said that we're going to displace anyone.
Yes.
They never said that. I think that Aboriginal title should be defined that the crown and right of Canada and the rights of the people who are actually own the land in the first place, and that you recognize Aboriginal title that way. And it doesn't mean that anyone is going to be displaced from their private property. It's not going to happen. But I think that when the courts say this is Indian land, like they did in Oklahoma, the Supreme Court said Oklahoma is Indian land. Well, the courts would say Canada is Indian land. That doesn't mean that anyone is going to get displaced. It just means that that's what it is. It is Indian land. Canada is covered with treaties, an Aboriginal title, and that we need to create an environment where appropriate financial resources are available for the original owners of those lands to do the things that they need to do for their people to make them worthwhile in this country.
Can you talk about poverty? Can you describe the level of poverty and what you've witnessed amongst your people in those terms?
I mean, I think what I see when I go to even my own community, the poor housing, poor infrastructure, inappropriate education facilities and health facilities, inappropriate justice systems, inappropriate security systems like policing. That's all, in my opinion. Lack of food, lack of clean drinking water, which was never the case when I was young. We never had any problems with that. And that's not going back too far. It's today, when you go to a community like mine, well, my community is not that bad. But if you go to other communities and you see what it is I just described, it's 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 uh, it's actually tragic, unacceptable in a country that's as wealthy as this country. That to me is poverty and the inability to plan properly on a daily basis to make things better for the people that let's say I represent in a community that's challenged that way.
I think it's really important that we talk just for a few minutes. Just I want to dig deeper on this area of poverty because I don't think most Canadians are privy, honestly, to what you're talking about. Um, I started a Jewish organization a number of years ago called Via Hafta, and it's a Jewish humanitarian organization. We actually had an aspect, a department, if you will, of the organization that worked very closely with First Nations, and it was really positive, and we did a lot of good work. So I'm a little bit perhaps more privy to understanding of the whole concept of poverty within Canada amongst First Nations and how that looks. But I would argue most people don't. Most people will not know how many reserves there are out there who have a boiled water alarm going off constantly. In other words, don't drink the water unless you boil it. Now, that's a crime. It's an absolute crime. It would never be accepted in Toronto or surrounding areas. So maybe you can be a little bit more specific and perhaps even graphic about the poverty that you've seen.
Well, when you talk about boil water
Advisory.
and I like to address why that became that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned earlier that we never had this problem. I remember using the water in the river for drinking at home. And today, you wouldn't dare do it. I remember using the stream running by the side of our house from the from the bush. I remember using that water to drink. You wouldn't do that today. All this, all of what it is that has been done to the water, has been done because of development. Corporate activity has destroyed the use of water. And now Canada is, as I said, introducing legislation to take away the right of our people to make our own rules on our water, regardless of where it's used or how it's used and where it's located. And that Canada has taken away the right of our people to have clean drinking water and has provided no compensation in return for that. It hasn't provided anything, including taking away other resources and have not returned anything back to the people. And the situation in our communities is not acceptable, and it should not be tolerated anymore by anyone. The poverty that's there, it's 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 uh, it's actually people need to go to the communities to see what it is that you want me to describe. I think people should go there and see it, and I've seen it, and I believe you've seen it, and it's not it's not acceptable, not acceptable anymore, and it's not the fault of the people who live there. Absolutely not.
How does it happen in our rich country though? How is it allowed to happen? What's the mindset of a politician, of a leader that says this is okay?
Well, I think it has to do with a combination of a lot of things, really, and our people are. I've been trying to convince all governments, to really come and sit down with the people to identify and define what it is that needs to be done to address the negative effects of what do you call progress for the rest of society, but not for the original owners of those resources that created that progress for the rest of society. That's that's what it is that needs to be really really addressed, and it's not happening. Politicians are not doing it, and I don't know if they're prepared to do it unless there's mass demonstrations that forces them to do it. I don't know if that is going to happen. We saw the the activity that happened about 10 years ago with the demonstration on the street regarding the Harper government's legislation, on the impact that legislation would have on the rights of our people without any consultation. And it helped. The demonstrations that happened helped. And but that hasn't happened lately. Maybe we need to go back to that. But my preference is no. My preference is that the people, the governments of the day, need to come to the table to speak to the leadership of the First Nations people to address the issue of all rights, and hopefully eliminate the poverty that's out there in far too many cases.
Ken, I know that you and Phil Fontaine are hockey players. In fact, I want to show a picture here for a second. Right.
Yeah.
And now this one here of the whole team, which I think is great. I love the fact that you guys play hockey. I don't know why Phil's not wearing a hockey sweater. Maybe he forgot his. I don't know. But in my discussions with you and with Phil, with Ted Nolan and a number of other people's, Maurice Switzer, I have found a beautiful spirit amongst First Nations, and an indomitable spirit, a willingness to fight like hell. And within all of that is this tremendous sense of humor. And I love nothing more than cracking a joke with you or with Phil. I guess my question to you, Ken, is as we wrap up, is how do you stay in the fight? The damage that's done is so severe, and one only has to look at it by visiting a reserve, as you mentioned before. It's so severe. How is it that you are able to take a breath and say, this is unbelievable? They don't deserve it, as you say, but I'm going to keep in there and I'm going to keep punching right until the 15th round is over. How do you do it?
Well, you know, I life is short,
It is.
and it's not that long ago that that I had this my grandfather talked to me about what it is that you're asking me, and it's important that that I that I don't just walk away and allow Canada and allow Manitoba to do what it is that it's always done: make unilateral decisions that affects me personally, my community, and indeed my people across the country without any meaningful input from those people or me or my community to participate in developing what it is that has to be developed to make things better for our people. It's required that we be taken in, consulted, accommodated, because that's what the laws are now. The law is that, and that I'm 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 patient, and I've been patient for a long time, and I've always said to our people that the patience of our people is magnificent, and it is.
Mhm.
And they're waiting, and they're waiting for people like me, actually, to be able to deliver what it is that they want. And we have to carry on with that fight. And I'm in a position to be able to help, and I want to help, and I will help. And I know that I'm in the sunset years of my life now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not interested. I am, and I'm going to continue to be interested in making sure that things are done in the right way, and and I'm vigilant about that. And I know Phil is too, and Ted and others, and that it will get done. I know it will get done because there's young people coming behind us that are going to get the job done.
Yeah, a powerful group of people, of kids.
Yeah.
You're right. Do you still play hockey?
Uh, I no, I wish I could now.
It's very cool, though. I also played hockey. So did I. Now, how's your Cree, by the way? Do you know the language well?
Oh yeah, I speak the language, but when you're away from the community for as long as I have, you tend not to use it as you would like to. But I'm still fluent. I can talk to my people, and
So, so what is
yeah,
this? Tansi Kiya.
Danchikina, Danchikina, Kia. We know we have different dialect. Danchikina, Kia
Yeah.
means Danchit. How are you?
Yeah. How are you? Yeah.
Kiminawana means are you well? Yeah,
R-
yeah. I can, I can. Once I
Here,
get home for a few days, I can,
you're good to go. I know. Now,
no,
just tell me how do you say in Cree, the sun is shining and the birds are singing? How do you say that?
oh, pisim segastesin ego nigamoga pinesizak. Pisim segastesin ego nigamog pinesizak. Birds are singing. The sun is shining.
I'm going to trust you on that. Is there anybody that you actually communicate with in Cree nowadays?
Well, my family, my sisters, but we're all in the same boat. We've been away from our community for quite some time now, and we don't talk the languages that as often as we should. But as I say, when I go home for a few days, I can. When I leave there, I'm pretty good at talking
Yeah.
in the language again.
I think Phil, maybe Peggy, his assistant, told me this. I think he speaks Ojibwe. He spoke to his late brother on the phone in Ojibwe,
That's right.
right?
Yeah,
He's pretty fluent at it, right?
yeah. Phil, he's like me. Yeah, he'll admit that he's not as fluent as he used to be,
Yeah.
and when you're away from the language as long as we have, it's difficult to to speak it at times. But as I say, when you get back into the community for a few days and you start talking to people and you listen to them, and then it comes back.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go.
Now, I want you to know that I've been playing around with artificial intelligence
Oh,
for a little while. I see you haven't. And
it
I,
it it's annoying.
it's annoying. But I
I
have
have,
asked, go ahead, sorry.
well, I have a theory with artificial intelligence and the mass shootings
Yeah.
that are going on. Is a correlation between people and the lack of respect for humanity by artificial intelligence. And people don't care about human life anymore. I mean, just the other day, I tried to get through to my bank, and all I did was talk to a computer. And at the end of the day, what I wanted to do, even what the instructions they gave me, I followed. I didn't get the information that I was supposed to get,
Right.
and I just left it. It's just, it's not right that the way humanity is being dealt with by AI, and you know, is it going to be addressed? I don't know.
I hope so.
It
I hope
should be, but it isn't at the moment.
well, then you will forgive me, Ken, when I tell you that I instruct AI to write poems about my guests. So I have an ode to Ken Young, Journey from Pain to Justice. And if you'd like to hear it, it's actually a very nice poem. Do you want to hear it from AI?
Yeah,
In the heart of the cold Canadian land, a young boy walked with a future unplanned. Through halls of sorrow, through nights full of fear, Ken Young, a spirit, kept pushing through tears. At Prince Albert's gates, the past's bitter toll. In Dauphin, his youth crushed deep in his soul. Two schools, two scars, where his heart learned to break. Yet in the darkest moment, he found a way to wake. Through silence and punishment, through broken trust, he carried the pain, but he never gave up. A spark in the heart, though the road was unclear, he dreamed of a future where justice drew near. From those wounded years, he rose like the sun, a warrior of wisdom, his battle begun. The first of his people to walk through the door, a lawyer by training, to fight and to restore. Through the storm of injustice, he stood tall and proud, with the voice of the voiceless speaking aloud. He negotiated with strength, with a heart full of grace, for healing, for closure, for truth's rightful place. Ken Young, a beacon who faced the past blight, now brings light to the darkness with courage and might. From the schools that scarred him to the law that he claimed, he forged the path forward where justice was named. A lawyer, a leader for those who had none, he healed what was broken, made the lost whole again. In the legacy of pain, he built something strong. Ken Young, the man who proved right, could come from wrong. Now, what do you think of that?
that's was that done by artificial intelligence?
Yes,
That's
yes.
well, that's a good use of AI.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Basically, Ken,
a
what I
good
do
use
is
of AI,
I
but
say write a poem
but
about Ken Young.
far too much of it is frustrating.
Yeah, I
Wow.
hear you. No, I hear
Yeah,
you. But I basically instruct AI, give the name, I give a little bit of your background,
yeah,
and then it spits this out.
yeah. That's excellent.
Not bad,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. That's I'm happy about that.
Well, listen, my friend, I want to thank you very much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, it's been a treat. I've really appreciated the time that you and I have spent together, Avrum.
Yeah,
Really
I did
enjoyed
too.
it.
And you're really. I just want to tell you that you're a lovely man, who gives so much to your people, to my people, to Canada, to the world. And the reason for this podcast is to inspire people through inspirational interviews. And I think that what people can take away from our hour together is, that we all have the ability to fight, and we have the ability to stay in the game, um, and to make differences in our world. And you're an individual who has done that. And so, in the words of the great Hebrews, Kol HaKavod, which means all the power to you. Thank you so much. Exactly. This is what I'm thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Miigwech. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for viewing the show, for watching it. It's been a real pleasure to be with you. And I would ask you very much, watch the entire show and make sure that you share it with others, because I think there's an awful lot here to learn. And I think our nation, the First Nations people, will be far better off. The world will be far better off if we're able to implement some of the ideas, some of the things that Ken has shared with us today. We live in a beautiful world, we really do, with a lot of pockmarks, granted, but our ability as humankind to make changes is huge. So until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesund, go in health. And Ken, any final words to put out there?
Well, Avrum, I appreciated the time that I spent with you in the last hour, and that I hope that people who watch the show will get something from it, and that if they need, they can probably get in touch with me in some way to have, if they have any questions about what it is that I've said on the show.
Yeah, they can do that through me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon, folks. And once again, thank you so much for spending your hour with us. We're very grateful for it. And just know that this world is a beautiful place. It can just be a tad more beautiful. So
absolutely,
it
is indeed.
It is a beautiful
place.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. We'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.